Hello, sweet friends, and welcome to The Way Through. Of course, we are here for another conversation together. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life and world around you to be connected with me here today. I'm so grateful to everyone who continues to tune in and be a part of the purpose behind this show. And of course, we're looking at everything through the lens of mediumship, through conscious co-creation, and really understanding our role based in metaphysics through what is a portion or a part of metaphysics, which is called ontology, which is about our capacity as human beings to be and understand and life and how we show up, and looking at the many ways in which our woundings and our egoic concepts and conditioning really interfere with some of our ability to have a really beautiful, peaceful, easy flow to our lives. And this conversation is no different today. We're looking at the at breaking family karma, taking a look at what it represents and means as a calling to serve or be of service. That's one of the biggest things for individuals who are on a spiritual path, or the light workers of the world, the highly sensitive and the mediums and all of these, the healers who really feel a deeper call to serve. And what is that call to serve? And it's not necessarily as straightforward when we identify, in terms of what purpose is in our life. So there's many facets of it. There's also many facets when we look at our healing journey as well, and our healing journey being able to reconcile the things that happened to us in our past, understanding, the bigger picture of things, and helping and moving forward. What are our invitations along our healing journey? And what if we begin to take a look at the wounds and these bad things that happen to us as recognizing that there's something bigger going on here? There are some things that are a part of our soul contract, or what we could say is more of our purpose for being in the world, and basically, even being here during this time, during this time that we find ourselves in. So when we want to look, I just want to, what if our family karma isn't this big task, this burdensome obligation, but it is a sacred calling, which is rooted in what is our spiritual purpose, what is a part of, when we're looking to identify what's my purpose, what if healing is a part of our purpose? One of the things is, I bring this up, and the why I wanted to bring this conversation to the table today is not only to, help to realize that there's, we're not here by accident. There is an inherent reason. There is, at least from, my personal view, and even the family struggles or challenges that we have within relationships. When we look at it through this other lens, that there is divine service here, that there is a karmic responsibility at play. And when we can begin to shift what maybe are some of the perspective of the challenges that we have in our life, we begin to look, those conventional ways of, like, it's such a burden, and the guilt, and I don't like my family. I don't want to be in my family. There's many people who, in the work that I do in helping, and through the coaching and the healing work that I do with my clients, where so many of them are saying, I don't feel like I fit in my family. I feel like I've been born into the wrong family. And so there can be a real disconnect, a feeling of belonging, or the feeling of connection. And when we look at this, instead of what is those conventional notions, that we can begin to look at, whoa, hang on a second. What if this is about transformation for the whole? And where we look at it as opportunities, not only for growth and for healing, but actually contributing to what is the collective consciousness that really transcends lifetimes, that it's bigger than just what we're doing and being here in this lifetime, in this date and time, here in 2025, as we sit in June, as the birth of, summer is taking place. So I want to just, through this conversation, we're going to explore this a little bit. We're going to delve deeply into how it intertwines with our inherited conditioning, our free will, taking a look at what the soul contracts may be sitting there, just to really kind of look and bring in an understanding that maybe, just maybe, for all of this bad stuff that's happened to us, all of these challenges and difficulties that we may have within our familial connections, within relationships and struggles that we may have in terms of siblings or parents or children or grandparents or aunts and uncles, whatever that connection is. Cousins and generations and generations and different ways of how we're connected. But what if this is a divine agreement where we've come in to accept certain family wounds, certain parts, that contribute to our soul's journey, not in terms of this obligation, but through this understanding that we are here to ultimately heal together, that we're a part of it, and that maybe, just maybe, I'm just throwing it out there, that the reason it feels like such a burden is that it's been gifted to you because you are someone who has the capacities, the awareness, and the dedication and commitment to honoring a deeper calling inside of you that will establish you as the ideal candidate, so to speak, to be able to carry this and heal it for the generations, for your bloodline. Now, one of the reasons I want to bring this into conversation, what sparked it is I was thinking back to the very first time I had an astrological reading, and my dear friend had looked at. She's an astrologer, of course, and she looked at my chart and she says, "Wow, like you are here to heal your family karma." And I was shocked in hearing that, and I really resisted. There's lots that I resist, just so you know, along in life and along my journey as well, that I resisted. And I just was like, wow, like they can take their own responsibility for their stuff. Like, why is this up to me? And it felt like such a heavy load to carry. It's like I don't want to do this work for everybody else. This is hard enough for me. And really got the ego really got mixed up in what this was, as opposed to understanding this as a calling of something deeper in terms of purpose. And so we can understand that, this process, it's rooted in spiritual law. It's rooted in ancestral connection, and it's a part of divine service. So it's not, I felt like I was being penalized in some way, that I was, responsible and had all of this stuff that I needed to work through. But it's not a penalty. Didn't have anything to do with the fact that I had done something wrong to have earned the responsibility of what is the karmic debt. It was that it carried with it purpose, it carried with it compassion, and it carried with it this opportunity to be of service in a way that I had never con- conceived before, in terms of what's my purpose, what am I here to do, what is we think of purpose as being that job, that career, that thing that's there that we're setting out to do, and we feel like we don't quite have a grasp on what this is. But to understand that this too is a part of what is the soul's purpose. This is a calling. And so we can look at the inherited aspects of our conditioning, and what are the unresolved wounds and the deconstructive cycles that we can see in terms of even like within many people's lives, and my life and other people's, where we see addictions and mental illness and all of these things, the abuse cycles that are there, that they are, yes, they are destructive, but they are also a part of something that's being summoned. These invitations for us to have that are resonant somewhere deep within our core being, that are whispering to us to what's going to help in aligning to what is a true purpose, and engaging in work, so to speak, this deep meaningful work that fulfills what is a divine design, something bigger and greater than who we are as human beings. So this work is not random. This is not as far as, it just shows up here and shows up there. It's something that is a part of all of our invitations as human beings. It's not just a select few who are positioned to have to be the conduit of healing, a conduit of healing for ancestors and descendants, for those, generations previous and generations moving forward. And that here in what is our soul's blueprint, that there is, we decided before we incarnated that we are here to fulfill specific roles. And so let's take as we move into this, let's go back and understand a little bit more about inherited conditioning. Now, if you're tuning in for the show for the very first time, hello, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. For those that maybe have been a part of the conversation, but you're still kind of going, what does that all mean? I really encourage you to go back and listen to some of the earlier shows at the beginning of my podcast, which was, somewhere around September-ish, I'm going to say August, September of 2024, where I started really bringing in some of the concepts of different aspects of the areas that we are invited to really dive into and to heal and to understand that when we're stepping on our healing journey, that there's, healing is not linear, and there's so many facets and so many reasons why we experience what we experience. But it's, helping, once we have the awareness, then we've got tools, we've got a direction, we have an understanding of a greater wholeness of what our healing journey is all about. So let's just take a look here real quickly. Inherited conditioning. Now, inherited conditioning refers to the subconscious patterns, the belief systems, the emotional responses, as well as the energetic imprint that's handed down through generations. It is a conditioned response, and a conditioned response that can originate from unresolved trauma, cultural expectations, maybe those belief systems that really hold in terms of what is a familial narrative, the influences of even society during an incarnation or many years ago. And so that inherited conditioning, that information gets repeated, and it gets sent, through our ancestors and through our bloodlines, through our family, which are these repetitive issues, whether they be through relationship, financial struggles, health problems, right down to those that at the core, the feelings of unworthiness. What are those reoccurring themes within a family? And those patterns don't just solely belong to one person in the family, but there is a collective energetic inheritance. There's this legacy of wounding, so to speak, that really stems out across generations. And it's that programming that operates at the subconscious level that influences so much of our perceptions of who we are, that dictates the choices that we're making without even our conscious awareness. So it's, and here again, I think what I find so interesting about inherited conditioning in this way, when we look at it from an ancestral perspective, is the fact that our ancestors, if there was anything that was unresolved, any of their emotional blueprints, anything that maybe was their karmic result of something that was done or they did within their experience of life, that we take it on, and we'll say, we'll carry that, we'll heal that as we go into this next lifetime, that we take it on their behalf, even though we maybe didn't even have a direct experience or were the root cause of what happened within the karmic implication. So I think that's just so fascinating to me, that when I go back to that astrology reading, when the astrologer saying you're here to heal your family karma, that I'm looking at it initially was looking at it in terms of my siblings and my parents and my grandparents, and thinking, wow, really, you guys, looking around at all of them saying, can nobody else, take some, where's some of the connection and help in all of this? Um, but that being said, it's more than that. It's about understanding, when we think of family karma, this is about the ancestral wounding, the echoes of what sits there that is still seeking resolution, that is, being able to clear away those inherited patterns, being able to dismantle the energetic framework that perpetuates suffering for within a bloodline, so that we can, open the space for healing, for growth, and ultimately, for freedom and liberation and peace and ease. And so we look at this as understanding that our familial karma is a part of our soul's contract. And we've made these agreements with ourselves, with other souls. It's all part of a divine plan that we're here to, outline that are out, these contracts outline the lessons that are to be learned, the wounds that we need to heal, the growth that our soul is looking to achieve during this lifetime. So these contracts are really involve an array of different family dynamics that are and can enter a particular family to take on specific challenges in terms of achieving what are these bigger spiritual objectives. And, some contracts involve carrying that, like I said, that family karma. Even if we're not directly responsible for creating the original wound, we're responsible for healing it. And so, this is about honoring past generations, the balancing of unresolved debts, so to speak, and being able to accept that there are certain family wounds that are a part of divine service. And it's of divine service to help in activating or elevating what is collective consciousness, that we are a part of the whole. Now, here again, we may also carry trauma of addiction, abuse, abandonment, which can all have originated within our ancestors' life. And so, here again, either consciously or unconsciously, we carry the weight of this karmic debt or these burdens in order to break the cycle, in order to heal those wounds, so that not only our ancestors are free, but future generations can also be free from repeating what is this, similar suffering. I like to look at this kind of as a like volunteer work. Where we have our own roles and our own jobs and things that we're here to do, and that are about our aspirations and our desires. And we've contextualized what our individual life is here, in this world. And then this is the volunteer work that we do. This is, to be the vessel of transformation, to begin to this service that is rooted in deep, deep love, so that no soul is left behind, so to speak, right? So I like to look at this as understanding that this is a calling, and being able to reframe our healing journey as a calling, whether again it's directly related to family karma, but I'm telling you it's a part of the whole. Whether we understand that our individual healing is a part of some familial contract that we have, but there is, this is a sacred duty that we have of being of service that we may not even understand. And so being able to reframe it in this way can really take us from feeling as if we are victims of the things that have happened, the victims of the inherited wounds, which is what I really felt like this, this a poor me, that here's something else, I've had so much already going on in my life, in terms of trauma and wounds and challenges that I was struggling with. And then I discovered that I've also agreed to having what are, helping to in support of healing family karma, and in my victim kind of frame of mind. Maybe at the time I wasn't quite in the lowest aspect of victimization and blaming everyone, but I really felt, it as if, oh my gosh, it's like, oh, here again, this is another way that, I'm having to deal with something that I don't, that I didn't feel was my responsibility, because I felt, others had a role in this. My perception and understanding is much different now compared to all those years ago when this was revealed to me. And so I've done a lot of healing, obviously, and a lot of work to understand that and recognize this, and approach what is this familial healing, this ancestral healing, the inherited conditioning with reverence and with looking at purpose, because it's not just about what's in it for me, it's about what's in it for all of us, so that it's a part of a higher collective, that we can, understand that our healing journey transcends personal. It transcends personal growth. It transcends what is just what has happened to me, and what the things that I've done or I might require forgiveness for, or need to forgive, or whatever the concept of that, or is. But that this is an elevation of collective consciousness within the bloodline and beyond. And so this is, again, as I said, once I was able to shift my perspective to understand that through this lens, that healing becomes an act of divine service, that it's an opportunity to fulfill a part of a soul's higher purpose in this lifetime. And of course, here, as always, looking at how do we contribute to the ongoing evolution of human consciousness, and to understand that that too is a part of what we take on within our healing journeys. And so when we this act of healing ancestral wounds, as I said, it's love, it's compassion, it's courage, it requires patience. And some of these family patterns, can be really shrouded in some of the heavy, darker aspects of our human psyche. They, shrouded in shame and denial and difficulty. And it really demands of us to not look at the deficiencies as indications, deficiencies again, where maybe I don't feel worthy enough. What's the deficiency that's underneath? Lovable enough, or successful enough, that not enoughness that that sits there as a result of maybe our own unresolved trauma, or what is the collective struggle or unresolved trauma of our ancestors as well. So this has been huge for me. This has been huge, and I would say really have dedicated probably the from that was a, I mean, I was already doing big healing work, and I already knew that the healing work that I was doing was creating a legacy of light. I used to, look at what legacy can I create for my family. And for me, it was always, looking at it from a financial concept, where because we had such struggles financially, where we just really felt like we were barely able to make ends meet. I never wanted my children and grandchildren to ever experience that. So for me, I was always focused on how do I generate generational wealth, so that this is no longer an issue. And yet that was so small and so limited and so egoic, because it's not the wealth that comes, that is not that has nothing to do with money. The wealth of joy, the wealth of ease, the wealth of peace that can pass down through generations has now forward and backwards, has become deeply, deeply focused, and understanding that, it's a part of what we can of my dharma in this lifetime, that it is a legacy of light, it is a legacy of love that becomes the most important part of what I leave behind, what is the imprint that of my existence within it. So I really began to take on my responsibility in terms of that, this personal responsibility of what's inherited, what are those ancestral, and really not only doing it for me, but looking, as I said, at the collective within the bloodline. So our personal responsibility in this, it's like everything. It's no different than when we are doing our personal work. It has an effect. It's happening simultaneously, even if we're not aware of it. So as we become conscious of our conditioning, what are our triggers, what are those reoccurring themes in our lives, or looking at our lineage and beginning to look at the stories and the things that have played out time and time again. It involves our inner work, it involves the shadow work, it involves the energetic clearing and the conscious choice, and forgiveness, which I love I love forgiveness, and in the sense that it's beyond what we. It's not about letting someone else off the hook, but just looking at this as an energy and what we can give to receive, and allowing ourselves to receive first, so that it becomes possible to give it. So it's just a matter, again, there's a, I believe I did another show on forgiveness. Maybe not. Could be. Have to go back and look, but if not, just know it's a continued part of the conversations that you can expect to have here as you join me every week for the show. So this is really about our ownership on our healing journey, and to understand that not only is it positively impacting ourselves and our lives and our ability to be very conscious in our approach to life and experience life in an up leveled way, but it also impacts, our descendants, our ancestors, and to know that our active participation in healing is a part of something that, yes, is our free will, but it's something that our soul is guiding us on to, that we hold the choice to engage with it or resist it, like anything. And that if you are someone who really feels like, you're and feels and is aware of the fact that you are a healer, that you are a medium, that you are, a light worker, that you are an empath, just know that this is a part of what is this a part of what it is you're here to do. What is that call to serve? How may I serve? How may I serve is not necessarily something in what is the tangible aspects, but to understand it's through this part of this inner work that we're all invited to do, and that you're doing it for you, and you're doing it for, your ancestors and your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, your great great grandchildren, and beyond. So the impact of this uh, can be kind of outlined or measured to 7 generations before and 7 generations into the future. Now, it could be more than that. It's just, based on the studies, the information of understanding of the impact of some of the frequency lines and timelines that get impacted as a result of this deep, deep healing work. So it's a like everything, our healing journey is not linear, and it's a multi-layered process. And, we go through what is, this, everything, as I said, from the forgiveness work, the energetic clearing, the inner child work, looking at repatterning our habits, and shifting the unconscious paradigms that we're operating in. And so all of that are those layers that begin that of our healing within the layers that begin to dissolve the karmic blockages and allow for new energy to flow freely within ourselves, within our bloodline, and it begins to affect not the very genetic makeup within our families. And when we look at the cellular piece of it, we look at the cellular healing that takes place and the cellular reconfiguration within the DNA. It has to do with the energetic field around the DNA, the energetic field of information that is received into the cells of the body. So what's feeding our body, what's feeding our existence begins to be altered and changed. And so when we're consciously engaging in the deeper healing work, then we are creating what is a new legacy for our family, which is founded in awareness, in compassion, in forgiveness, in what is all of our spiritual evolution. And so that ripple effect moves through time. And as it moves through time, which means that it's not just a legacy of pain and suffering, but there's a new foundation that's being created and being built upon, that are going to allow for um, all of us this is happening very unconscious, and to be able to heal those wounds, as well as to move forward and be able to have the liberation to make more empowered choices, to have the higher understanding, to begin to create a space of love and cooperation and harmony within family relationships and family systems, because the cycles of violence, addiction, emotional suffering, poverty, well, you name it, begins to be altered and changed changed forever. And so for me, that, as I said, that became this massive, massive awareness of the fact of how sacred this was and how honored I was to be able to take this on and to know that this sacred calling had from a more positive perspective of service, was something that was, rooted, not in terms of being burdened by it, but was rooted in love and in transformation and healing, one that was uplifting, not just, myself and my family, but to understand that that resonance of was impacting the entire collective consciousness, that we're, it's when we look at how may I serve and how do we contribute to humanity, to know this, like, this is how we can do it. We can do this by becoming much more aware of how our act of healing, these things that we do in being able to heal, through the many modalities that are available to us, and looking at doing the deeper, trauma work, and staying on path and making sure that we're healing and attentive to what's coming up, and looking at how we can transform what's going on inside of us and free ourselves from the suffering, that begins to create this massive ripple, that goes out, this light and this healing and this love that goes out to the collective consciousness. And so we're contributing to the planet, we're contributing to the cosmos. We are, again, it's like a testament of the divine within us that is looking to fulfill what is its calling in unity, in harmony, in love. All of that is intertwined with our willingness to do this good work. And it is good work. It is, good is just God with two O's. And so we can look at this as being, part of what it is that we're here to do. And doing isn't necessarily sometimes, the like always doing something. There is the being in who we are as well, being who we are, being authentic, being peaceful, being patient, being loving. All of that is a contribution as well. So, it doesn't have to necessarily be I need to just focus and do my deep healing work and focus on my healing journey and ensure that I'm unraveling all the inherited conditioning and that I'm healing this familial karma. So, it's not this I have to work because the system is broken. It is this, I'm doing this work, and I'm being, the best person I possibly can be. I'm being kind, I'm being compassionate, the being state, the being still and being, gracious. All of those things are a contribution of light. And so all of that it also helps to heal. And it is, I always think there's such noble acts when we understand what is our highest spiritual purpose here on earth. What is our purpose? To be a conduit, to be a conduit of love, to be a conduit of healing, to be a conduit of light, where in that light is the compassion, is the love, is the resilience, that we're looking to cultivate. And to me, that there's such a deep honor in it. It's so sacred, because it just reminds us that, there's more to us than what meets the eye. And so, we're never alone. I mean, and so we're never alone when we are, our loved ones on the other side are with us always. Our guides and angels are with us. We have all of this divine support and all of these allies of light who are, here to help and support us on these journeys. And so are our ancestors. And we have soul contracts. I was just explaining this to one of my within one of my mediumship courses the other day, that we have soul contracts in the sense that not just with individuals here in the physical world, but that we hold these contracts and agreements even with individuals in the non-physical world. So part of our soul contract, when we look at saying, I'm here to break, the family karmic uh, karmic wound. I'm here to break the cycle. That you're still, what you're doing is you're still upholding contracts with those individuals who you have life with in physical, and as well as the soul contracts that you have with those in the non-physical. This is, it never ends. Just because there's a physical and non-physical experience, one doesn't cease to have impact or have responsibility for each other and to each other in terms of our incarnations and humanity, our experiences as human beings. So to me, it's just, it just yields these profound benefits when we choose to really see this as a calling and answer that call, and work, towards finding greater inner peace and freedom, and more importantly, being able to heal, excuse me, being able to heal the generational trauma. That's huge, breaking the cycles of dysfunction so that our families, our generations can be happier, healthier, more in terms of loving, compassionate, and where we're creating really unity and community within family. And yeah, it's all a part of what is our, divine purpose. All right. So what are some practical steps? So, how do we fulfill this sacred calling here? Well, I said earlier, there's some work that we have to take on here. And so it's a blend of inner work. It's in our conscious practices. It's found in our spiritual discipline, and looking at, how do we deepen our engagement in supporting or intentionally supporting that we are contributing to that healing. So, I think the first thing that you hear time and time again from many different ways, and when we look at healing and breaking cycles within the karmic responsibilities that we have, it's awareness, it's mindful awareness. So, our meditation, being able to sit in meditation, reflect on our life, take a look as being an observer to our family and the dynamics that exist within our family. What are the patterns? What shows up time and time again? In my family, there was alcoholism, there was physical abuse, there was violence, there was poverty or financial struggles. What are these patterns that sit there? The being emotionally unavailable. Like, what are the triggers that were here? And triggers not in blame of parents or grandparents, but just looking for awareness. And it's through meditation. Meditation is, I mean, so great in just a multitude of ways that it just gives us this chance to be still, to be present, to reflect, and just sit and be an observer to some of the things that have happened within our life. So even just our willingness to take a look at this is one of the ways that it begins to make some movement. The energy around what has happened begins to transform and change because we're looking at it through a lens of observation instead of judgment. And that really can change everything. Observation, being the observer to something, takes us out of reaction and just puts us into a state of response. We're able to consider the bigger picture, the bigger perspective. We can begin to look through with more compassion at someone as opposed to the judgment of the blame of what they should have done and didn't do, and all the gamut on what that is. So that really gives us this opening. Just reflection alone starts to alter and change the energy around this. And anytime the energy is altered or shifted in any positive way, healing begins, healing happens. So we're opening up the pathway. We're opening up the pathway for light to come in. And so our ability to just to look through eyes of compassion to people in our family, or these things that happened, and seeking what is a greater spiritual understanding of why it happened. And not so much, as you've heard me talk about, it's not like the why, like we're seeking the why, we need those answers, but it's about what we can do. It's like, give me the awareness to understand so that I can take action and know exactly what to do going forward. And that's where, again, that's with I always I always say, like, once we have the awareness, we're like halfway halfway done the healing part of it, because it takes so much for the awareness to be born, for the ego to get out of the way, for us to move beyond, our judgments. So there's a lot of work that leads us up to there. So once we have the awareness, we're over halfway there in terms of being able to heal or reconcile something. So it puts us here, awareness first. Awareness is the birthing and the pathway for light to come, for more light to come in. This is about, our compassion, our forgiveness practices, being able to release the bitterness, the resentments, the blame that sits there. That opens the door even wider for healing. And this is, we just look at all of these little things that we can do. I think sometimes we think this is big work. It is big, and when we look at what the impact of it's going to be, but it's in the small steps, the little things that we can do that can create a movement or a shift deep inside of us and within the energetic framework, within the patterns, that can really alter and shift things in, in great ways. So the little things have big results. Here again, being a medium, for those of you who are tuning into the show that are sensitive to the non-physical world, being able to connect with your ancestors. Now, you don't need to be a medium in order to do this. You can do this, simply through your prayers, your rituals, even building relationships and talking about and sharing stories. Sitting down. I know I've sat down with my mom many times to, talk about, the stories. What's the family? What happened? What about, tell me about this person, their life. Even just being able to connect through with our ancestors in talking and about them, talking about the history of our family with someone, that's still in the physical world, can really help to not only honor the journey, but begin to alter and shift the relationship that we have with our lineage. And again, that door for healing opens even more, because we're no longer denying that these things happened. We're no longer in avoidance or trying to pretend them out of reality. We're accepting that this is a part of the family, what happened, the shadows of our human psyche that were played out in live in live form and live movie. And so just there too, being able to connect with our ancestors can happen through conversations, through stories, as well as our rituals, our prayers, sitting down and calling in and connecting with that loved one on the other side to get more, just get more information. I know I've, connected with many of my loved ones on the other side, and helping to reconcile and understand the things that were a part of our family, the stories that sat there, what happened, and what it, one, and with understanding, there can be, there's grace in understanding. So that's a big part of this as well. Something else to look at is really engaging in energy healing. So, there's so many forms, and I have always taken the alternative path in on my healing journey. It's what, it's a part of, we could say, my soul's purpose here in this lifetime as well. I never do anything based on, the traditional and the accepted. I like to ruffle feathers a little bit, and I ruffle feathers even when I don't try. So it's, I say that jokingly, in the sense that, it's just, I just choose to do things a little bit different because that feels right. It's what feels aligned, whether other people agree with it or understand it or not. But, look at the energy healing, sound healing, visualization, your Reiki, your EFT, the things that you can do to clear what are the ancestral imprints that are sitting within your energy field, that are within the belief systems and paradigms that are there. And so looking at, even modalities that will help to, like theta, things to help to shift and alter the subconscious paradigms, the unhealthy belief systems. All of that can be, focused and intended for the clearing of the ancestral wounding and the imprints. Our active engagement means that we can clear so much more up than maybe what than what we've, maybe could do otherwise, or what would happen just, as we move through and karma gets resolved as we go. So being able to, create space for this through to anchor in intention, even invoking and calling in our angels and our guides for divine support, and even calling upon our ancestors to help. All of these ways are ways that we can look at. Okay, we can have a collective healing experience just simply through setting some intentions and some asking and our prayer. All of those things can, as I said, small things that we can do that can have, that can really begin to orchestrate what is the collective healing within the bloodline. And again, of course, in contribution, of course, to humanity, which is always the bigger task, and which is a big part of moving humanity forward, which is what I love about being here on Empower, because it's a part of what is at the core principle of the shows that come in and that you're listening to here. So yeah, this is, it's a personal and it's a collective journey, and it requires, like everything, patience and commitment and faith in the larger cosmic plan, and the faith in the larger cosmic reason for our existences, and to know that we can transform things. And this role as a healer doesn't necessarily mean that you're out healing other people, but healing yourself. We're all healers. We have this capacity for this divine alchemy right within us, and we can, most certainly create transformation. It's not only possible, it is definite, and that we can, really what is can help in releasing those inherited wounds. And those inherited wounds don't have to define who we are and define future generations. So there's so much here. There's so much here, as always, that I, can go, directions to go, conversations to be had. And I'm so grateful for you in tuning into today's show, and just recognizing that you have a very big purpose for being, that you're here. And so that alone, that means that you have purpose. And to know that that purpose can be a part of doing this deeper healing work, of breaking cycles, and that this legacy rooted in love and compassion and spiritual awakening is a legacy of light, that you here are, in essence, your divine role as a healer, as a light bearer, as a conduit of transformation. These are gifts, and gifts that not only in terms of liberating you from the wounds and stories and pain and suffering of your past, but are contributing to the awakening of all. And I thank you for your willingness to not only be here and listen and be a part of this conversation, but your willingness to do this deep, deep work. Because ultimately, in whatever way, shape, and form that we have had challenges or upset or controversy or dramas, or anything within our lives, and where it's been difficult, where we felt like we just didn't have the strength and we just didn't have the know-how. I hope something on today's show gave you some inspiration and some insight to your power that exists inside of you, and the fact that there is, ultimately, at the end of the day, irregardless of what's happening, there is always a way through. Thank you, sweet friends. I'm so, so grateful to have you here today. Bye for now.